The chamber of the Galactic Council was a symphony of impossible architecture and serene light, a place designed to inspire calm and order. Today it hummed with a tension so sharp it felt like a physical crackle in the air. Ambassador Kalar of the Shill, a being of crystalline elegance, watched as the human representative, Dr. Aris Thorne, stood before the assembly. His simple cloth and polymer suit looked absurdly primitive against the organic silks and gleaming alloys of the others. The verdict had just been delivered. Expulsion. Humanity was to be cut off from the shared knowledge, the trade routes, the communal defense pact. They were to be exiled, cast back into their lonely corner of the spiral arm. The charge was not aggression, nor theft, nor any typical transgression. It was repulsion, a profound, instinctive, cultural disgust. And the Veln, a species of profound emotional sensitivity who communicated via subtle bioluminescent patterns, had been the first to raise the alarm after a cultural exchange on Earth. They reported not on human violence, but on human art. Specifically, a category they termed atrocity preservation. The council screen displayed the evidence: images of the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial, the haunting sketches in the Yad Vashem archives, the stark fields of the killing fields of Choyong-ek. The humans, the accusers stated, were obsessed with their own shame. They built monuments not to triumphs, but to their most horrific failures. They curated museums not of beauty, but of barbarity. They taught their young about genocide, slavery, and systemic cruelty in explicit, unflinching detail. Your species wallows in the pathological, the Velen ambassador pulsed with hues of sickly green. You ritualize your guilt. You make a spectacle of your suffering. It is a psychic poison that threatens the harmony of all conscious thought. We cannot have this relentless digging in the graves of your own morality within our collective. Aris Thorne did not rage. He merely stood, his shoulders heavy. You misunderstand, he said, his voice calm but carrying. We do not preserve these sites to celebrate the acts. We preserve them to remember the victims, and to ensure the perpetrators are not forgotten either. That is precisely the sickness, interrupted the Groll, a warlike but honor-bound species. You fixate on the negative. We honor our heroes. We celebrate our great victories. To give such attention to defeat and evil is to invite it into your soul. It is weakness masquerading as wisdom. Your psychological profile is incompatible with a harmonious galaxy. The vote was unanimous. As Aris was escorted from the chamber, a sense of bewildered isolation settled over the human diaspora. They were pariahs, not for what they did, but for what they remembered. Back on Earth, the news was met with a grim, resigned understanding. The galaxy, it seemed, preferred amnesia. The exile lasted 3 generations. The Galactic Council flourished in its pristine harmony, a tapestry of cultures that had carefully edited their histories, focusing only on light, on progress, on collective triumph. Shadows were not to be studied, only discarded. Then, the Devourers came. They were not a biological race, but a psychic plague, or a mimetic virus in a silicon form. They emerged from the galactic core, targeting not planets, but minds. Their weapon was a perfect, overwhelming historical revisionism. They would envelop a world and flood its population with a glorious, fabricated past, a past so brilliant, so heroic, so satisfying that the present reality grew pale and worthless by comparison. The infected species would simply stop. They would sit in blissful catatonia, living in the dream past, while their bodies wasted away. The Groll's great warrior histories were twisted into tales of such absolute bloodless victory that the act of real fighting seemed crude and pointless. The Veln's gentle emotional tapestry was rewoven into a perpetual static paradise, making their true subtle emotions feel like painful discord. The Council's fleets, armed with weapons of mass destruction, found nothing to shoot. Their soldiers, trained for honorable combat, fell into silent reverie before they could even engage. World after world fell silent, ensnared by beautiful lies. In their desperation, hidden from the main channels, a dissident faction, a shill historian named Kavan, a Groll warrior who felt a nagging unease about his own sanitized history, and a Veln empath sensing a great, hollow emptiness in the galaxy, recalled the exiled ones, the humans, with their repulsive habits. They found humanity changed, hardened by isolation, but still, inexplicably, maintaining their grim museums, their days of remembrance. They pleaded with the new human coordinator, Ilara Vance, granddaughter of Aris Thorn. "Your ailment," Kavan said, his crystalline form flickering with distress. This obsession with failure and horror. It may be the only antibody we have." Ilara understood. She didn't send a fleet. She sent archivists, historians, psychologists, and a single heavily shielded data core. The mission made planetfall on Kalar's homeworld, now shrouded in the Devourer's field. The Council's last forces were paralyzed, many already succumbing to the blissful illusions. The human team, however, had trained for this their whole lives. They had been raised on the raw, ugly truth of the Holocaust, the Rwandan genocide, the tyranny of totalitarian regimes. They knew what a lie smelled like, no matter how sweetly it was perfumed. As the Devourer's wave hit them, they didn't see glorious heroes. They saw, superimposed over the false images, the fingerprints of manipulation. Where the illusion showed a flawless Groll ancestor, a human historian muttered, "Caesar's propaganda claimed the same and activated a neural counterfrequency, a recitation of the actual brutal cost of conquest." Where the Veln were offered eternal emotional perfection, a human empath broadcast the raw, complex, and painful poetry of a Holocaust survivor, the ugly, beautiful truth of enduring. The battle was not fought with beams and bombs, but with memories. The human team, anchored by the unvarnished, horrific truth of their own past, became islands of reality in the sea of lies. They walked through the dream-stricken crowds, broadcasting not a counterfiction, but hard, documented, unlovely history. They transmitted photographs from Nanking, audio from the Armenian marches, the statistical ledgers of the Atlantic slave trade. And they showed not just the victims' suffering, but the bureaucratic banality of the perpetrators, the chillingly ordinary faces of evil. To the galaxy that had only celebrated victory, this was vomit-inducing. To the Devourers, it was anathema. Their virus functioned by providing a better, cleaner past. It could not compete with a species that willingly embraced the worst of its own. The human data core, nicknamed the Black Box, unleashed its curated archive of human atrocity and, crucially, the slow, difficult, imperfect process of accountability and justice that sometimes, but not always, followed. The Groll warrior, jolted from a dream of flawless duels, witnessed the Nuremberg trials, the mundane, legalistic, but essential act of holding monsters accountable in a courtroom, not a glorious battlefield. The concept of command responsibility struck him like a physical blow, more profound than any warrior's code. The Veln empath, drowning in false bliss, felt the profound, aching sorrow of a mother at the tomb of the unknown soldier, a specific personal grief for a loss that would never be glorified, only mourned. This real, complex pain was an anchor that pulled her back. The Devourers recoiled. Their entire existence was predicated on the idea that a mind would always choose the beautiful lie over the painful truth. Humanity was the exception. Humanity had built its moral immune system not by ignoring the pathogen, but by studying it, by keeping a sample of it forever in the lab, no matter how repulsive. On the Shill homeworld, as the psychic fog lifted, Ambassador Kalar, now ancient, It found Alara Vance standing amidst the slowly awakening populace. The crystalline being was silent for a long time, observing the humans, who looked exhausted, saddened, but resolute. "You were not wallowing," Kalar finally stated, light pulsing in a slow, somber rhythm. "You were vaccinating." Ilara nodded, looking at a shrill child confusedly clinging to its parent. "The light is easy to love, Ambassador. It's the darkness you must learn to recognize so you can fight it when it comes wearing a smile. We don't preserve our worst moments because we are proud of them. We preserve them so that when a prettier version tries to sell itself, we can say, 'No, we've seen the real thing. We know how this story ends.'" Humanity was not invited back to the Galactic Council. Instead, a new request was made. The Black Box Archive was not sealed away. It became the foundation of a new institution, the Galactic Archive of Verified History. Its curators, the humans. Their charge was not to create a glorious galactic history, but an accurate one. To be the keepers of the flame of truth, no matter how ugly its heat. They became the galaxy's conscience, its moral historians, the ones who remembered the darkness so that others could safely walk in the light. Their exile was over, replaced by a solemn, burdensome duty. The very truth that had repulsed the galaxy became its salvation, and humanity's ugly, unflinching memory became the shield that guarded all. Decades after the Devourer War, the Chamber of Echoes, as the new institution was informally known, stood on a neutral asteroid. It was a somber, human-designed structure, all stark angles and quiet halls. Here, species came not to celebrate, but to witness. Ilara Vance, now Elder Curator, moved slowly through the Hall of Shadows, where the histories of all member species were kept with the same unflinching honesty humanity had demanded for its own. A young Shill apprentice, Telnor, walked beside her, his crystalline form shimmering with anxious curiosity. "We have received the first submission from the Groll," Telnor chimed softly. "It is the full account of the cleansing of Exiled Gorge. Not the song of victory, but the warrior logs detailing the execution of non-combatants." Ilara stopped before a human display, a simple, worn child's shoe from the 20th century. "That is the point, Telnor. The Council's old archives were a gallery of finished, polished statues. We are a workshop full of broken pottery, sharp tools, and repair manuals. The Groll are showing immense courage." Telnor's light flickered in a pattern of confusion. "But the process is causing pain. There are protests on Veln. They say revisiting old conflicts is reviving hatreds we had buried." "Some things buried are not dead," Ilara said, her voice carrying the weight of her years. "They are landmines. Better to map them carefully than to have a future generation step on them unaware. The pain you feel is not from the memory itself, but from the shock of recognizing a wound that was never properly cleaned." A priority alert pulsed through the asteroid's network. It was a signal from a deep space exploration probe, one of the joint missions launched in the new spirit of cooperation. The probe had entered a distant and unexplored star system and found a derelict, not of the Devourers, but of a species unknown to the galactic records. And the derelict's data core, miraculously intact, was broadcasting a repeating signal. When translated, it was a single, triumphant declaration. "We have achieved perfection. All conflict, all inequality, all suffering is eliminated. Our history is now one of flawless harmony." A cold dread settled in the chamber. The words were a perfect mirror of the Devourer's lure, but this was a physical artifact, a tomb ship drifting through the void. The Council, still psychologically scarred, panicked. Some advocated for immediate destruction of the probe and quarantine of the system. Fear of a new mimetic plague spread. Ilara Vance called for a different approach. "We do not destroy information," she stated to the Emergency Council. "We contextualize it. We have spent decades building an immune system. Let us test it. A team was assembled, a mix of species, all trained by the human curators in source analysis and cognitive bias recognition. They boarded a ship, the Vigil, and journeyed to the derelict. Aboard was Telnor, representing the new generation of historians. What they found was beautiful, serene, and deeply unsettling. The ship was a marvel of engineering, its halls adorned with art depicting blissful beings in peaceful utopias. The log spoke of a great reconciliation, a final enlightenment. There were no records of war, crime, or strife after a certain point in their timeline. It was, superficially, everything the old Galactic Council had once aspired to be. The human lead analyst, Jonas, scowled at a screen. It's too clean. A timeline doesn't just become spotless. Where are the arguments? The accidents? The bad days? They dug deeper, using forensic data recovery techniques honed on corrupted Earth hard drives containing lost histories. Beneath the top layer of perfection, they found fragments, deleted entries, scrambled audio, a hidden, fragmented log from a lower-level maintenance technician, its final entry stating, "They are coming for the dissonant. To be perfect is to be silent." The discovery sent a shock through the team. This was not a species that had evolved beyond conflict. They had engineered it away by silencing anyone or anything that caused it. Their perfection was a state-enforced, surgically maintained silence, a societal catatonia far more deliberate and permanent than the devourer's dream. Telnor, studying the serene faces in the artwork, now saw not peace, but an absence. "They did not cure their sickness," he whispered, his light dim with horror. "They killed the patient to stop the symptoms." Jonas nodded grimly. Exactly. The devourers sold a beautiful lie about the past. These people built a terrible truth for their present. Both are forms of annihilation. The Vigil returned with its report. The galaxy did not face a new enemy but a new warning, a monument to the ultimate cost of the desire for a painless existence. The derelict was not weaponized, but its history was. It was towed to the Chamber of Echoes. A new wing was proposed, not for the history of atrocity, but for the history of silence. At the dedication, Ilara Vance, and her voice thin but clear, addressed the assembled representatives of 100 species. "We were exiled for remembering our scars. We learned that scars are maps of survival. This," she gestured to the preserved derelict, "teaches us that a body without scars is not a perfect body. It is either a corpse or a prisoner. Let this be our final lesson. Harmony bought with erasure is not peace. It is merely quiet. And in that quiet, the most important truths, the ugly, the painful, the repulsive ones, are the first to die. We must keep them alive, not for their own sake, but for ours. It is the noise of our remembered imperfections that tells us we are still truly living." The chamber fell silent, not with the dead quiet of the derelict, but with the profound, humming quiet of a truth finally heard and understood. Humanity's exile was not just over. Its purpose had been fulfilled, and in doing so, had redefined the very meaning of galactic civilization. They were no longer pariahs. They were the keepers of the essential, repulsive, life-giving noise.